There is always light in Los Angeles, but light doesn't always mean truth. Marissa knew that. She had lived on the West Coast for over 10 years, but still couldn't decide. Was this her city, or just a temporary set? Every day felt like a glossy magazine cover. The sea, the waves, coffee in a paper cup, a man who was late even for a conversation. Justin, her almost perfect man. He wasn't bad, just nobody. He wore tracksuits that cost more than her first design fees and talked about balance in every sentence. They slept in the same bed, but in different worlds. And then there were the dinners, where the silence between them could be cut with a knife. Everything felt like a game where both knew the rules but pretended to play fair. And somewhere in the city, there was him, Matthew. He didn't know Marissa personally, but he had known her face for a long time, her voice, her style. Matt's friend, Adeline, had once been defended by Marissa herself, and for years she shared stories about her fabulous boss lady. At first, Matt listened indifferently, then with curiosity, and later with a certain spark. He saw her on a swimsuit brand's ad poster. He knew how she gestured, how she laughed. He knew how often she visited a certain cafe in Malibu and where her dog Bruno left wet marks on the wooden terrace. He wasn't intrusive. He was attentive. And then, a Saturday morning, Marissa came to her favorite coffee shop without makeup, in a linen shirt when the sea breeze was blowing and disappointment in life still smelled of menthol from her chewing gum. She ordered coffee and stood by the window and heard a voice. Sorry, this might sound strange, but aren't you Marissa? She turned around. He looked like he had to fight with himself to ask that question. Matthew, reserved, a bit tanned, with his shirt untucked and a voice with not a hint of falseness. Yes, she replied. Do we know each other? Not exactly. I've heard about you, from Adeline. We used to work together. This explanation sounded so ordinary that it actually inspired trust, and even more, curiosity. He didn't ask for her number. He just said, if you ever have time, drop by Voyager Vinyl on Rose Avenue. There's good music and less pressure than here. He left. She stayed. But in her head there was already noise, not from the coffee, not from the sea, from someone who knew her before she remembered herself. In the evening she dared to go there, just to look. Everything smelled of vinyl, dust, and calm. He was playing something old, something French. They didn't touch on marriage, career, or fidelity. They talked about songs, about the smell of autumn air, about what they were missing. And at one point she asked, you showed up kind of on time. But why now? Matt looked at her and smiled crookedly, as if he knew something she hadn't realized yet. Because, Marissa, only now are you finally ready for someone to hear you. And she didn't answer. Because it was the truth. Marissa thought she was in control. She thought she was the director of a new intrigue in her own life, and Matt was just an interesting actor for a supporting role. But everything changed, and faster than she expected. At first, it was just occasional messages from him. You look different today. I saw you on Sunset. She hadn't been on Sunset, at least, not with him. Then, flowers at the office. No signature, but with a note that smelled just like his cologne. Her colleagues joked, and she laughed, a bit too loudly, a bit too artificially. The next week, he waited for her outside the office. Just stood there, in a white t-shirt, with a look that didn't ask, it demanded. You're not answering, he said. Did I do something wrong? Matt, it's not exactly... Well, I didn't make any promises, she answered cautiously. No, you didn't. But look, I'm not asking you to marry me. It's hard for me to breathe when you're not around. You understand? There was truth in his eyes, but the kind that scares you. He started showing up everywhere. At yoga in Santa Monica, where she went every Friday. At the vinyl record store, where she took her daughter from her first marriage. Once, he even sent her a photo of herself, taken from a distance, usually reserved for hunters. She started to panic. At first gently, in the style of, I need to talk to him, then with a chill in her stomach. Justin, as always, noticed nothing. She even wanted to confess to him, at least a little. But then he brought home a new business case and said she'd become calmer lately. and she realized he had always been blind. Marissa called Matt. This has to stop. Number, because I've just started to feel you. I've waited for this for years, Marissa. You can't just throw me away like a wrapper. Matt, you made up our story yourself. We're not lovers. We're a mistake. Silence. And then, don't you understand that the strongest stories come from mistakes? The next day, he didn't show up, didn't write, didn't call. She felt relief, brief, like an inhale. Because 3 days later, Justin left the house, came back, and said, "Someone scratched my car," and left an envelope on the hood. Inside, your photo from the beach, alone, in a swimsuit. She turned pale. What the hell was that? And she realized silence is worse than pressure. Matt was nearby. He just changed tactics. Now he wanted her to be afraid. In the evening, she packed her things, went to the shore, sat facing the sea, and wrote, "You could have been the light. You became a shadow. I don't belong to you, but if you ever get overwhelmed again, don't look for me. Look for yourself," and turned off her phone.